In certain segments of this video, the instructor has removed his safety glasses to facilitate photography. RCBS strongly recommends that safety glasses be worn during all reloading operations and while shooting any firearm. No matter what kind of shooter you are, or what type of firearm and ammunition you use, hand-loading that ammo has some real advantages. Just ask anybody who does it, like Gary Davis.
Nearly 2/3 the cost of new rounds is in the brass, so reloading these cases puts dollars in my pocket right up front. I can also custom tailor ammunition to each of my guns and the type shooting I do. Now that's a real performance benefit. Plus, I'm a better shooter because I can afford to practice more. Now, I'll tell you, for savings, proficiency, and personal satisfaction, there's only one way to go. Hand load.
If you're already a hand loader, during the next few minutes we'll help sharpen your skills. If you're just getting interested, we'll show you how to do it properly and safely. The techniques are time-proven and reliable, especially with the right RCBS equipment. And a Spear manual, which gives you safety procedures as well as load data for every popular cartridge.
A strong, rigid bench. Couldn't do without it. And I've installed an accessory base plate for added strength and convenience.
RCBS accessory base plate, drilled and tapped holes make setup and takedown a cinch. A number of accessories are either desirable or essential to the reloading process. And the best way to buy them is in kits, which offer considerable savings over individual purchase. Perhaps the most useful base plate application, though, is for mounting a reloading press, which exerts terrific pressure on the edge of the bench. That's because reloading consists of forcibly resizing the case and forcefully seating a bullet into it. RCBS has a complete line of presses to fit every handloader's needs, all with lifetime guaranteed quality construction. Some are fully automatic. The Ammo Master Auto, Auto 4x4, and Piggyback 2. Others are single stage, which most experts recommend for beginners and low volume reloading. The Partner, Reloader Special, Ammo Master Single, and Rock Chucker.
This rock chucker I'm using is the best known and most popular press available. Its heavy construction and block-O design, coupled with the mechanical advantage of compound leverage, makes full-length resizing easy, no matter how many cases I have.
Begin reloading by inspecting each case. Rifle or pistol, you're looking for basically the same things. Check the primer for flattening, cratering, or perforation. These can be signs of excessive pressure. Examine the side. Splits in the neck, shoulder, or wall of the case are cause for rejecting it. So are severe dents, corrosion, or any other problem that might weaken the brass and make it unsafe under pressure, especially a crack or bright ring, which indicate head separation. A quick check with the RCBS Case Master will confirm the problem. crush the bad brass so it can't get mixed back in with the good stuff. Cases that pass inspection have to be cleaned, either with elbow grease or a power case cleaner. The RCBS vibratory model uses a dry media containing polish. The Sidewinder is a rotary drum unit and can use either dry or liquid polishing media.
Now that my cases have been inspected and cleaned, I'm ready to begin the actual reloading process. But first, watch what happens to a fired round.
Burning powder generates gases that force the case to expand, opening the neck while sealing the chamber. The only pressure outlet is to push the bullet down the barrel. After pressure subsides, the case contracts slightly, enabling it to be extracted. The bodies of all fired cases are slightly larger in diameter, and there's an obvious distinction between straight-walled pistol brass and the standard bottleneck rifle case. A rifle case shoulder is moved forward a little by firing, and its neck gets too large to hold another bullet securely. Consequently, the case has to be resized. Resizing works the brass and shortens its life. A neck sizing die can help because it doesn't set the shoulder back or come in contact with the sides of the case, but there is a trade-off.
Here's a real important point to me. Hand loading is a matter of tolerances, not absolutes. Even the smallest variance in dimensions can mean that a neck-sized round won't chamber in another rifle. Now that could be bad news. For example, when my son and I go hunting together, we both carry .30-06s.
If you want your ammo to fit any firearm chambered for that cartridge, use a full-length sizing die, which compresses the entire case to its original dimension. Going in, the shoulder is moved back and the body diameter reduced. Thickness of case brass varies, so the neck has to be sized small, then expanded back to the correct inside diameter. As the case pulls out, an expander ball is drawn through the neck, setting its inside diameter for a snug bullet fit.
Before I can resize rifle cases, they have to be lubricated to keep them from sticking. Case lube on a pad works fine, but I can't be heavy-handed, or lubricant will build up in the die and dent my cases.
Light application of RCBS Case Slick aerosol lubricant will also do the trick. And finally, use a case neck brush with a small amount of lubricant so the expander ball can pass more easily through the neck. To set the sizing die, press the correct shell holder into its ram slot while rotating it slightly. Lower the press handle all the way to the bottom, then turn the die down until it contacts the shell holder. Lift up on the handle to lower the ram a little. Turn the die down another 1/8 to 1/4 turn so that the linkage cams over when the handle is all the way down. That action is only possible with RCBS's compound leverage, and it guarantees full-length resizing. After tightening the die lock ring, insert a case and lower the handle. When the ram forces the case into the die, the decapping pin pushes out the fired primer and the die resizes the case. As you lift the handle, you'll feel the expander ball pass through the neck, setting its inside diameter. When all cases are resized, remove the lubricant. A lubricated case won't grip the chamber walls, and this can increase force on the breech face. While you're at it, clean the residue from the primer pocket and deburr the flash hole for uniform powder ignition. That burr's been there since the case was manufactured, so this is a one-time step. Next, check the length of each case with calipers. Rifle brass grows longer every time it's fired. A case that's too long may not chamber, or even worse, if it does, the mouth can jam in the throat of the chamber, creating dangerous pressure on firing. Trimming a case to its recommended maximum length is simple with an RCBS Trim Pro. It's the fastest, most convenient power trimmer on the market. The motor starts and stops automatically, and spring pressure feeds the cutter into the case, leaving your hands free to deburr the previously trimmed mouth at the same time, then chamfer the inside. This leaves an angled surface that lets the bullet start in without hanging up and possibly crushing the case. But don't overdo it. Leave a little flat on the edge. Making a cookie cutter will weaken the case and shorten the usable life.
Now it's time to install new CCI primers. I always handle primers real carefully because oil and other contaminants can cause misfires. And when I'm working with them, I always wear my safety glasses.
Scatter primers on an RCBS primer tray and shake it back and forth on the bench surface. This brings the primers anvil side up. On the rock chucker, you can insert primers one at a time. Or add an automatic primer feed combo. Load up to 100 primers into the tube. Mount the tube on your rock chucker and install the primers automatically without touching them. Other convenient RCBS priming options are the hand priming tool with its patented safety gate, a bench-mounted automatic priming tool, and the standard priming tool. Whichever one you choose, its function is to press a primer into the pocket at the right depth. A primer that isn't at least flush with the case head can be struck and accidentally detonated. If it's not seated to the bottom of the pocket, it can act like a shock absorber, resulting in a misfire. On the other hand, seating a primer too deeply can crush it and flatten the cup, also causing a misfire. For reliable detonation, the correct seating depth is just below flush, with legs of the anvil firmly against the bottom of the pocket.
It'd be easier if I could always seat primers to the same depth below flush, but in the real world of tolerances instead of absolutes, primers vary slightly in height, and pockets have different depths. So I've developed a personal feel for when the primer is seated to the right depth. It just takes a little practice. I always check each case for a high primer and seat it deeper right on the spot, never after the round is complete. Now I check my spare manual again for recommended powder charges. It lets me make choices based on the type and weight of spare bullet I'll use. Now, one choice I don't pick, though, is some guy's pet load I may have heard about at the range last week.
The powder charging technique is identical for all types of cases. You'll need a scale, and RCBS makes several models, both electronic and mechanical. The Model 505 is the most popular. On an eye-level surface, adjust the poises to 0. Use the leveling foot to make sure the beam is indicating 0. Set the charge weight recommended in the manual. And add powder to the scale pan until the beam zeroes again. Since doing this over and over again can be tedious, you might include the RCBS Uniflow powder measure with your equipment. Fill it with powder and throw several charges to get it settled. Set the metering screw to the approximate charge weight. Then return all the powder to the hopper. Throw a charge. Weigh it. And fine-tune the adjustment. Throw a charge. Weigh it. Keeping the hopper at least half full, or using a baffle, will help you throw consistent charges. And check the weight of every 10th case to be sure it's still right. Powders come in a variety of shapes: ball, flake, granular, stick, and some don't meter as uniformly as others. To compensate, try setting the measure a little bit light. And use an RCBS powder trickler to finish each charge.
No matter which technique I use, I always visually inspect every case to make sure the right powder charge is in there. Only then will I seat a spare bullet.
The body of the seating die holds the case in place, while the seater plug pushes the bullet to its correct depth. To adjust the die, thread it a few turns into the press. Make one last powder check before sliding a charged case into the shell holder and run it to the top. Turn the die body down until it stops. That's when the crimp shoulder contacts the case mouth. Back out one complete turn using the head stamp for orientation and tighten the die lock ring. To set the seating depth, hold a bullet on the case mouth and guide both into the die. Lower the handle until you feel the bullet resist, then start into the case. Raise the handle. If necessary, loosen the seater plug lock ring, not the die lock ring. And if the bullet's not deep enough, screw the plug down further. Or back it out if it's seating the bullet too deeply. Repeat the process until seating's just right. Then tighten the lock ring. Raise the handle, take out the cartridge, and check its length with calipers. Compare the measurement with the maximum overall length specified in your manual, or use a factory round for reference. Now every bullet will seat to the same depth. Some ammunition also needs to be crimped, pistol rounds definitely, and certain rifle rounds, those used in tubular magazines like the Winchester Model 94, or heavy recoil cartridges such as the .338 Winchester Magnum. The purpose of the crimp is not to grip the bullet, but to prevent it from moving further into the case neck. It's called a roll crimp because the case mouth rolls into a cannelure or groove in the bullet. To set up the press for crimping while the bullet's being seated, first, loosen the cedar plug lock ring and back the plug out several turns. Take a loaded round with the bullet you've already seated and put it in the shell holder. Loosen the die lock ring. Now, run it all the way to the top and turn the die body down until it stops. That means its crimp shoulder is resting on the case mouth. This is why you back the cedar plug out, so it won't push the bullet too far into the case when you adjust the die. Raise the handle slightly and screw the die body down just a little more, about 1/8 of a turn. Then take the cartridge out and check the crimp. You may need to lower the die a little more, but only enough to roll the case mouth into the bottom of the cannelure. A good crimp isn't dramatic, just a slight curvature of the case mouth. Once the crimp is exactly right, run the cartridge back into the die and tighten the die lock ring. Turn the cedar plug back down until it's firmly against the top of the bullet. And tighten the cedar plug lock ring. If you overcrimp and bite into the lead, the case shoulder will bulge and the cartridge won't chamber. When all your seating or seating and crimping is finished, put the reloaded cartridges into an ammo box and label it with complete details of the load.
Now for a pistol case. The sizer die has a carbide ring that slips down the case wall. Less metal-to-metal contact, combined with a smooth, hard carbide surface, means you can skip the lubricant. And pistol cases don't tend to grow longer as fast as rifle cases, so you don't have to trim as often.
Just turn the die down until it barely touches the shell holder so you don't crack the carbide ring. Tighten the lock ring and size.
There's one more step with pistol cases. Remember how the rifle case neck was expanded from the inside? Well, the straight-walled pistol case needs an extra die for that job.
The expander die has a plug that sets the neck diameter and flares the case mouth so the bullet can start in smoothly. Screw in the die until the body's just slightly off the shell holder. And tighten the lock ring. Run the case into the die. Now check the flare. If there isn't enough, turn the expander down a little further until you get the right amount of flare. Too much will shorten case life. Too little will risk crushing the brass during bullet seating.
Taper crimping is the other step that distinguishes handgun ammo from rifle cartridges. On rimless, auto-loading rounds, the flare is removed from the case mouth and it's squeezed tightly against the bullet, which doesn't normally have a cannelure.
After seating a bullet to the proper depth, back out the cedar plug, run the cartridge all the way to the top, and set the die for crimping by loosening the lock ring. Screw the die body down a little. Remove the round and measure the case mouth with calipers. That dimension should be the same as a diameter measurement taken a little further down the bullet, away from the case mouth. If it isn't, keep turning the die body down and checking again until the two measurements are equal. That means the flare is now gone from the case mouth. Compare the proper taper crimp with over-crimped rounds. Here's an over-crimped bulge that prevents the cartridge from chambering. Once the crimp is exactly right, run the cartridge back into the die, turn the cedar plug back down until it's firmly against the top of the bullet, and tighten the cedar plug lock ring. In fact, check them both before continuing.
Now, once everything's tightened down, I can make my complete run, safe and simple. Check my powder charge, slide a case into the shell holder, set the bullet on top, seat and crimp it. After I've checked each round for flaws, I put them in a labeled ammo box with details of the load, and I'm ready for action.
So, hand load your spent cases. It's a real money saver. Produces high-quality ammunition. Allows you to practice more, become a better shooter, and it's fun and rewarding in its own right. Safe and simple is absolutely true, especially with RCBS reloading equipment. No matter what your level of reloading experience, the type of shooting you do, or the ammunition you prefer, RCBS makes quality hand-loading equipment that's ideally suited to your needs and invites you to check out the wide variety of possibilities. RCBS, the world's finest hand-loading equipment. In certain segments of this video, the instructor has removed his safety glasses to facilitate photography. RCBS strongly recommends that safety glasses be worn during all reloading operations and while shooting any firearm.